Taco Bell has announced plans to launch a taco shell made entirely out of fried chicken. Because in the age of Trump, there really is no hope. The Trump Report starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh my goodness, is that the B Street Band tribute to Bruce Springsteen? Might actually be the actual boss. Welcome to the Trump Report. I am your moderator, and there'll be a lot to moderate in this installment. Christian Bladt on Twitter at ChristianDMZ. And don't forget that the show is at Trump Report ABTV. Follow us there, like us on YouTube, comment, rate us on iTunes. People like to ask what they can do to help the show. Comment, rating us on iTunes, all that stuff. It kind of gets us bumped up. When people Google Trump, Trump podcast, that'll get us higher rated. Joined way down at the end of the desk.
Way over here.
The Sancho Panza to my Don Quixote, the one, the only, Scott Moore at SMan80.
Hey,
Thank
guys.
you for joining us when everyone else presented me with a doctor's note. They are excused, however, they are absent.
They are absent.
And 10 demerits, 20 demerits for Stephen Helmkamp.
Yeah.
Just
yes.
because.
He deserves it.
There's a lot to talk about,
There
but
is.
this episode is called Badlands, and we're playing a little Bruce Springsteen. Let's start talking about the inauguration.
Yes.
And look, we've talked a couple of times over the last few weeks in particular, performers dropping out of the inauguration.
Dropping like
right.
flies.
And, even tributes to actual performers are dropping out. I thought it was interesting when I read, I think last week, that a tribute to Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band called the B Street Band would be at the New Jersey inaugural ball. Not because, I get the New Jersey connection.
Right.
But I was just like, man, if there was ever somebody that wouldn't want to be associated with the Donald Trump inauguration, it's Bruce Springsteen. So I think that there was some pressure applied to the band by some members of the E Street Band, not Bruce himself. So I think little Steven must have said something.
I think
Maybe
so.
Nils Lofgren. Patty Scale
it was
probably
Steven.
not. It was probably Jake Clemens. He's like, it's not my place. And look, I get it. I understand the move. And at the end of the day, it's probably bad for business. I will actually concede to feeling a little bad for the band because it's a high-profile gig. They were going to get paid real money. And, tribute bands are actually good business. Yeah. A friend of mine hosts a show called World's Greatest Tribute Bands on Access TV. A little plug for my friend Katie Darrell. It's in its 7th season. And tribute bands, believe me, they're big business, especially in little nooks and crannies in the country where the actual bands don't perform.
Right.
And there are very few places in New Jersey that Bruce Springsteen doesn't perform. But, I'm going to bet, I don't know, they probably do really well in Belmar, in Long Beach Island, out on the Jersey Seaside Heights, they're probably huge.
Huge.
So, I don't know, I feel bad for the band, but I think ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, they probably would find establishments, even in New Jersey, would be like, I'm not going to book that Bruce Springsteen tribute band because they're the ones that played the Trump Report. That would be fun. No, they played the inauguration. And, and it's like, there's like 90 other tributes to Bruce Springsteen, especially here in New Jersey.
The F Street Band, the T's.
Yeah, right, exactly. I off the top of my head, I know there's one called Tramps Like Us. And they used to play all the time in the city. And New York City. So anyway, I feel bad for them, but I think it's probably a smart move. Jennifer Holliday also received some pressure. It's interesting because I will see who's actually going to be there. But Scott, give us your thoughts a little bit that it's gotten as far as even a Bruce Springsteen tribute band is backing out of the Trump train.
I mean, that isn't a good thing for Trump when you have a tribute band. No offense to tribute bands, because like you said, they do bring a lot of business.
They work really hard.
But it's a tribute band. It's not like Bruce Springsteen. It's the tribute band, and they are backing out. So that does not look good for Trump that even the tribute bands are leaving. I actually think it's better for them in the long run because I think, a lot of the supporters, like you're saying, in Jersey and other places that are not Trump supporters are going to be more excited to support them when they're out and about
I think
than the other way around.
They're going to probably get booked for more gigs.
Yeah, because
by
of this.
not playing,
right?
and I think it'll be fine. I feel bad that this band got pressured.
No,
These
I
are probably
agree.
just regular guys who have 9-to-5 jobs and they do this on the side. That's what a lot of those tribute
of course,
bands do.
and they do. But I think if it wasn't for that, they're getting more attention now, so it's going to just help them in the long run. Whereas if they didn't, they would have just sort of been a has-been that wasn't going to be heard about. It was just, it happened at the New Jersey ball. Nobody's going to even really know about it. So it's actually going to work better because it's bringing them much needed attention. So now we know who they are, and they're more likely to book these people, where before we'd never heard of them really, and it would have just gone on, and
I'm going to bet that the Trump camp is glad that this happened, because now Chris Christie's like, well, if the Springsteen tribute band's not going to be there, I'm not even going to go because it's not a buffet. See, I had to go make the fat joke. By the way, Jimbo in the booth, if you could put the chat up on there. And by the way, I think your social media is actually at Jimbo in the booth. So I called you by your.
That is the best handle yet.
Yeah.
I wish I could ever.
Let's put it
get
this way.
like
This
that.
is going to be a little inside. This is basically just for after. It's a lot better than that Zach Wilson, that's for sure. Anyway, there's obviously some other news out there. I guess the big news was that Representative John Lewis called Trump's presidency illegitimate, which, again, that's an opinion. There's a lot of opinions out there. I have a lot of things to say about Donald Trump. I don't know that he's an illegitimate president. I'm pretty sure enough people voted for him in the states where it added up to more than 270. But I understand the claim. But if you criticize Trump, you should always know that he's not going to just I'll just shrug this one off. Yeah. There's no one's going to be there's not the day where it's like he's going to let one go.
I even thought SNL he was going to let that one go. I was like, oh, he's just not going to respond anymore. And then by middle of the day on Sunday,
stop watching SNL.
I know, but it was funny because I thought, oh, he's kind of losing it now, his edge, because he's not responding, or maybe he decided to give up on actually watching it. No, at 3:00 on Sunday, he finally posted about that as well.
Well, that just means his DVR was backed up. And he finally got caught up.
Yeah. Well, I was going to also segue back a little bit to the inaugural performers,
absolutely.
just really quick, and then we can go to the John Lewis thing. What is the America's Got Talent? Is it Jackie Camacho? Am I saying that right?
I actually forget what her last name was. We talked about her on the show.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because she has a transgender sister, and I think it's also the opposite side of the people that decide to perform at his inauguration, and they're saying, and her claim is, it did upset a lot of the LGBT allies and everything, and her claim is this is for America, and this is an American thing. It's not about the actual president himself or the soon-to-be president. It's about the American tradition, and that's why she's going ahead and singing the national anthem for the inauguration. And I think it's interesting because it does kind of take a little bit of both sides, because obviously Jennifer Holliday stepped back because of the LGBT community, saying okay, my fans do not want me to be there. And so there's an interesting dichotomy there, and I can really see both sides to it. Just like I am going to be watching the inauguration. I know a lot of people are boycotting that, but I feel that it's still part of our history, as much as I may disagree with the person that's going to be taking the office. I think it's the same kind of thing, and sometimes it's a hard line for people that support these artists, and where that line is drawn, and supporting them, and maybe them doing this out of the bigger cause than just the person, but for the office and for the country. So I can definitely understand both sides.
Yeah, no, I understand the people who are making the point, we're not going to watch, we're going to make the show, we're going to have a show of support against...
Right, the solidarity.
That's the word I was looking for. And some people are saying don't even turn your TV on that day. I don't quite know what that accomplishes, but just don't watch. And look, I respect that decision. I don't feel that way. I look at this, I was saying to Scott before we started, it's like a lot of people still watch the Super Bowl when their team's not in it. I mean, otherwise people in Cleveland would never have watched the Super Bowl in all 51 years. So, little joke, Cleveland. But at the same time, it's like, I get it. Watching isn't an endorsement of anything. It's more like you kind of want to see what's going to happen. It's a very historic event. No matter who the president was, and I don't mean either of these two candidates that we had last year. It's just, it's a new president, and they're being ushered in. And you're going to see former presidents up on that stage. And personally, even if we weren't doing the show, I would still watch. But this is a good segue to let everyone know we're doing a special edition of the Trump Report this Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to share our thoughts on what we've seen so far. I'm sure the inaugural balls and whatnot will be going on into the wee hours, but we'll have seen the swearing in and... You know, I'm going to guess maybe there'll be some people who are unhappy. There might be some protesters along the way.
And I hope so, and I support that.
If there are vocal, nonviolent protests,
right, exactly. I
completely
support nonviolent
that.
protests, but I support a lot of visible protesting in a nonviolent way. Absolutely.
And I'll be interested in seeing that. But so we're going to do that, and we'll mention it again. That's this Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 Eastern, AfterBuzz TV. For the link, go to @TrumpReportABTV, and Scott will be there. Our friend Chelsea will be there, and we'll see who else will be here. I'm not quite sure.
It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance that goes with it. There's also a lot of the fascinations. You know, actually, the nuclear football gets handed off at that point. You know, when the swearing in is happening. I mean, it's just fascinating the way the transfer of power actually happens up to the second, and when that happens, and when. You know, the current president right now becomes the former president, and all the stuff that happens even at the White House. Just think that they don't even start the moving process until President Obama leaves the White House with President-elect Trump, and everything is switched out in just those few hours. And to me, that's always been fascinating. I mean, they just roll in there and they bring in all the new stuff, take out all the old stuff, and it's all set up like it's been there forever when the new president comes in.
This wasn't on the list of the things we're going to talk about, but did you see the letter that Jenna and Barbara Bush wrote to Sasha Malia? I thought it was very sweet. They sort of commented on, here's what it's going to be like now that you're leaving, because they showed them around the White House when they got there. You know, they actually took time off from college and they went there because they wanted to show them around. I thought it was really sweet. And, you know, this is very divisive, this transfer of power.
Right, but more than normal.
Even that one, you know, the last two have been divisive in, you know, various circles.
Right.
You know, so this is just yet another one. But at the same time, you read about that and you're like, yeah, there's a human element to it.
Right.
And I really liked reading. I thought it was very sweet.
It was really,
regardless
really,
of what
sweet.
you think about George W. Bush
or his
what you think of his kids,
family or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, these two girls knew what it was like to be little girls in the White House. And it's like, yeah, let's just take a look at all this stuff.
Right.
And it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated on that side of it.
I love all that stuff. And it kind of brings to mind, it reminded me of when their grandfather, Bush 41, did that for Bill Clinton and wrote this really nice letter. And for him, that had to have been really tough because he had lost re-election. He's the last incumbent, actually, that has lost re-election until Trump. But he's the last one that has lost re-election.
Where's Stephen Helmkamp to react to that?
If Trump even makes it to 20 without being impeached or resigning or quitting out of just frustration.
There's a lot of qualifications to that statement.
I'm counting on it to happen between now and then. But he is the last sitting president to have lost re-election. And he wrote this really nice letter to Bill Clinton in '93 when he took over. So, you know, it is, to me, very fascinating to see that moment in time. Again, I don't support this incoming president at all in any stretch, and I actually had a kind of Twitter argument and a Facebook argument with people about, we need to just, you know, support him. I said, absolutely not. I never will. I'm sorry, I just can't because there's too many
and we've talked about
issues,
this.
and we've talked ad nauseum.
Chelsea disagreed that I feel like you can support the country, you can support the
and
office of the president.
And that's what I said. I support the country and I support the office. I do not support that particular
You want to make sure everything is still standing in 2020, 2024, or 2032 if he figures out a way to, you know, add another term.
So get rid of the 22nd Amendment.
I just said that too,
hey, I wouldn't put it past him at this point to do away with the 22nd Amendment when he has all the Republicans
I think he'll figure out a
states.
way that Schwarzenegger can replace him at this job too. There'll be a couple amendments that are necessary at that point. But anyway, so let's get the plug in one more time. Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific, right here at AfterBuzz TV.
Inauguration Day, Friday, January 20th.
We will be here, and we hope you guys are you guys and girls and men and women. We hope that the crowd follows us to that day.
Very
so let's get back
too.
to John Lewis. So talk a little bit about this little fracas between he and Donald Trump and some of the claims that the president-elect have made towards the congressman.
Look, he basically, John Lewis had said that he didn't believe, or he believed he was an illegitimate president. Beyond just the popular vote thing, he felt because of the Russia interaction that he felt that this was an illegitimate president. Now, like you said earlier, knowing Trump's past behavior, you know that you're going to be singled out. I think what Trump did was incredibly poor taste.
Yeah.
Because you even had Republicans that were like, "Whoa, stop this! This is crazy. This is a civil rights icon. You just don't say things like that. And also, he's very again showing his not very strong knowledge on the 5th District where John Lewis represents in Atlanta. Yes, there's definitely higher unemployment in some areas and higher poverty levels, but overall, that's an area of Atlanta that's, has Buckhead, and has the airport, which is the busiest airport in the country, and it has Delta headquarters
a little bit,
and
but
Coca-Cola
Buckhead is a
headquarters,
really
upscale area,
neighborhood, yeah.
And it has Coca-Cola and Delta headquarters. And the Atlanta Journal-Constitution on Sunday totally trashed Trump by saying, this is completely...
Scott, are you saying that President-elect Donald Trump made comments about something he didn't know anything about?
Exactly, and that's, again...
I don't know if I can believe that.
I know,
I'm sorry.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy talk. So I think that it was just really... Again, he just has no taste, but in my opinion, but in really poor taste to do that of all times during MLK weekend, and just trashing someone who's spent his entire life fighting for equal rights, fighting for equality, and all the stuff that he did in the 60s with Martin Luther King. It was really, really in poor taste. I get where people can be frustrated with John Lewis too, because he also did this in 2001 when George W. Bush was inaugurated.
Well, now he's saying that this is the first inauguration he's going to skip, and it's like, well, actually,
and then he did backtrack on that, so that wasn't good on his part, and because they were two separate issues, and at that point it was popular.
There's two of us, I do want to point out there's something that's making the rounds a lot, is that John Lewis in 2010 said that there was a group of Tea Partiers, I believe on the steps of the Capitol, using the N-word at he and members of the Congressional Black Caucus. It is a claim that many on the right feel was fabricated, to the extent that my friend, the late great Andrew Breitbart, who has a website named after him, unfortunately, he offered first $10,000 and then $100,000 for someone who could produce a tape of it. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it means that people believe it didn't happen, and they sort of immediately brought this back up. And there was like 5 things that they brought up. And considering how long he's been in public life, if you only got 5 things that people are criticizing you on, you're better off than some people who've been president. But I think it was in very poor taste, especially Martin Luther King weekend, just not thinking of the time and place. So, from a damage control, a spin position, what does Donald Trump do? The only thing you can do, meet with MLK III, Martin Luther King III. He has a meeting with him.
And skip the visit of the African American Museum, the Smithsonian Museum that just opened recently.
And what's your theory as to why he skipped
Well,
it?
because that John Lewis is featured prominently in this museum with a lot of the pictures and things with Martin Luther King. So it was very convenient that he had scheduling conflicts and instead met with Martin Luther King.
I believe he had brunch with Omarosa. So,
that counted for his MLK festivities.
For the day.
Look, on one hand, I look at MLK III as being like, okay, well, being the bridge builder and unifier, not divider. That's what he claims he is. But at the same time, too, I also felt like it was a way for him to get some attention in my own kind of way. I looked at it that way because also this guy is going to be president, like we were saying, whether we like it or not, on Friday. And so he feels this is a great way for him to kind of get back in there and get in the limelight as well. Not trying to take away from it, because I think he also does want to really come in and be a unifier. I just thought the timing was off, and it was more, to me, felt like attention for himself. More than anything else.
I think that there were people who were surprised that MLK III was
met
meeting with
on the observation of his father's birthday.
I don't pretend to know everything or even most or a lot about Martin Luther King. I feel like Martin Luther King would have taken that meeting on that day, and he was just junior. I feel like the third was just thinking this is what he would have done, and you're meeting with the president. In theory, only good things can come from that. Unless you're Steve Harvey, who had the misfortune of not just meeting with Donald Trump, but speaking highly of him. And I think that, we're going to have to see less of this once he's actually president for a little while. You can't criticize everyone who actually takes a meeting with the president. Or can you? Do you think that everyone who takes a meeting with soon to be, I'm sorry, I just want to get people ready, that this will be thrown around a lot. Meeting with President Trump.
Ugh, I still can't
I
deal
know,
with it.
but look, I'm trying to help you get ready for it.
I know. It's just think about when I was coming here tonight. This is the last show we'll be doing with Obama as president.
This is the last Trump report in the Obama era. Yeah,
it's very upsetting. Look, again, the MLK III thing. I honestly, I could just imagine if Martin Luther King Jr. was still alive at 88 years old and was on Twitter somehow. I could just imagine him being in a Twitter war with Trump as well, because I can imagine him saying stuff. That's where it's just hard for me, and it's just like, ugh. And it's just hard to see his son be there and meet with Trump. But again, I don't pretend to know everything that was going on and what the real reason and motivation why MLK III went to this meeting and what he was hoping to get out of it. What I read about is that, which I do think is a great thing, is just getting the national ID card. Being able to get an ID card that's free for minority and poor people that have a hard time getting that. And that's always been an issue with voter suppression is, oh, you need an ID, but sometimes in some of these isolated states you have to drive 200 miles to go to the nearest DMV to get an ID, and then you have to pay for it, or it's reduced, but still a challenge to get there. And so if he really was going in there and trying to convince the president-elect of some of these things, I don't think it'll happen, because the Republican Party is not very big on helping expanding voting hours and voting rights. It's more suppressing and making it more difficult, so I don't see that would be a change. But I'm not going to try to figure out exactly what MLK III's motivation was. For Steve Harvey,
which, let's talk for a quick second about the transition from going to talking about the son of Martin Luther King Jr. to the guy who hosts the Family Feud.
Right.
But they're both pretty big stories this week. It's just funny that.
And look, again, Steve Harvey has a foundation that works with children, and he's, again, it's kind of that same thing. He's trying to promote his foundation.
He's trying to help his foundation.
And get himself out there.
And he's getting criticized.
And look, I just, again, find it very base that he was going in to talk about HUD. And again, with Ben Carson, it just feels very base to me, like Trump's just going out, like, let me go for the star black guys out there that, might be feeling, it gives me, like, makes me feel gross.
Yeah.
It's very base. But at the same time, again, Steve Harvey has his own stuff to plug. He's one of the busiest men out there. I thought it was funny that his excuse was his wife wasn't going to let him attend the inauguration on Friday. So that's why he backtracked and said he wasn't going anymore, was because of that. So that's a nice excuse to have in your back pocket. So he is not attending the inauguration, apparently, because his wife won't let him.
Well, he's probably taping 4 episodes of the Family Feud that day.
Well, it's funny. I know some people that actually work on his show in Chicago, so I try to be friendly towards Steve Harvey, because I know they work with him personally and know that he's a hard worker, good guy.
I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Steve Harvey. His mustache, on the other hand, I've heard bad things about. That's
a whole other story. But I think, again, a lot of people are going in to try to get their FaceTime with the next president, and even if we don't agree with it or don't like it, that's sort of the way it works in our world. Right. You're still going to get FaceTime regardless of who's in office, who's, what party's there. There's always those people who are going to go in.
And again, he has a foundation. People have a lot of charitable concerns. There are issues that they're supporting.
And I think a lot of people, even though I don't agree with it, but I think a lot of people, if it came down to it and they got the phone call to say, hey, President-elect Trump wants to meet with you, and you disagreed with him, you would think this is a great time for me to go in and say what I think should be happening and let him listen to me in this one-on-one setting or whatever. So I think a lot of people also go in with the thought that they can maybe change his mind, even if they hate him, disagree with him, don't like his policies. I think it'd be hard for me to even, if he called me up on the phone, even though I can't stand him, and said, I want to hear your thought on the LGBT community or whatever, I would have a hard time saying no, because I think this would be my opportunity to go in and tell him this is what he should do, even though I don't want to be in the room with him. But
but
I think
there's
even
just
if
something about, if you're getting an opportunity,
if you have that influence and that possibility to be able to influence someone regardless, I think it's very difficult to say no. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can see again where that happens, just like with
when you think of how much money people spend to get access to the president.
FaceTime.
If Stephen Helmkamp was here right now, he would probably mention how many millions of dollars people gave to the Clinton Foundation for the opportunity to meet with what everyone expected would be President Hillary Clinton. But to that point,
hoping
that something crazy happens at that moment. She's going to be there. She's going to be on the stage. Painfully that close to actually the swearing.
Close, yet so far away.
Now that's something we need to take a tally of. How many cutaways to Hillary Clinton we see? For everybody watching live on YouTube, go ahead and join us in the chat. Lawrence Bakery points out, I think people need to reconcile that just because you have a meeting with Donald Trump does not mean mean you automatically approve of everything Trump does. I think that's
No, I
definitely much in
definitely agree with
support,
that.
and we agree with that. I think having someone in the room that contests a majority of his own views might be a positive thing. It may just be wishful thinking, but look, he's
Right.
going to hear a differing opinion. And I would say that many presidents do surround themselves with yes men and yes women. So if they bring in someone, it's like, well, they have a different view on this. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio, we are fairly well versed in his, how he's very passionate about the environment.
Right.
Donald Trump is pretty much on the record saying that he doesn't think that global warming / climate change is
It's all
man-made.
Chinese hoax,
Yeah,
and his EPA
but
guy is very much against
all the
global
more
warming.
reason for, if he were asked, Leonardo DiCaprio, instead of being able to hold his head up a little higher at all these swanky parties and saying, oh yeah, I didn't take a meeting with him, he was like, well, I talked to him, I tried to convince him. He didn't listen, but I did my part, I tried. I think that there's a lot more to be said to sitting down and meeting with someone. I mean, Bono met with George W. Bush to talk about AIDS and the issues that were important to him.
And that actually, I'm not saying that he was the one that changed that, but, George W. Bush doesn't get the credit for all the work with the AIDS work that he did in Africa.
Yeah.
And that is his presidency did for that. But yeah, I think being able to go in and speak with someone with differing views is really important, because too much now we do keep ourselves surrounded in our own separate viewpoints and only talk to people that agree 100% with us. And so I think it is good. Like I don't edit posts when people respond against me on things. I think it's very important to still have that and not self-edit that and
I
let
think the
people
worst
see
thing
that.
people can do during the next 4 years is, if you're a Trump supporter, you only watch Fox News. If you were a Hillary voter, you only watch MSNBC. And you defriend all the people who voted the way that you didn't. And then you're going to put yourself in this little bubble, and we're going to be even more isolated. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think that's the plot for the Pixar movie WALL-E. I think that's how it happens, that everybody just sort of, or it's more Idiocracy that I'm thinking of. In any case,
Not to say I won't be fighting it every step of the way, though.
But to just be
allow
aware
those
what other people are
viewpoints to
saying,
be out there, and I let them
and
leave those things on my posts, and I don't delete them.
Look, I'm gonna say, I think, Scott, you probably don't hate everyone who voted for Donald Trump.
I do not.
There might be some that you do. You may know some.
I do know quite a few people that did.
But I'm sure that you don't hate them all. And if you do hate someone, that's probably not why. There's probably more to it than that. Anyway,
It's a strong word.
Thank you also to Kim K, who is in the booth.
Yes.
Her online handle is the other Kim K. But as I always tell you, you're the only Kim K that matters to us.
That's right. She's the only Kim K to me. The other Kim K is the other Kim K.
Yeah, exactly. Who even is that?
I don't know.
Anyway, so we
She's the other
appreciate
Kim K.
everybody who's in there. Nicholas Skelton, everybody. And so we've talked about that now. We were talking about not attending the inaugural, and there are 45 Democrats. That number has probably gone up since I put that in my notes. Because when I originally wrote it, it was like 30. And actually, no, it was 20. And so throughout the day, I'm like, I gotta go change that in my notes. So 45 Democrats not attending the inaugural. And again, their choice, they don't have to attend.
Right, and
I think five of them,
I support it.
5 of them typically don't attend the inauguration. Some of them are just like, I don't like that stuff. But it's fine that they don't go. Now, the interesting thing is, if you look at the list, unless you're somebody who like TiVo's C-SPAN to watch the speeches of the day, you don't know who most of them are. There might be 1 or 2 names that you're like, I think I'm familiar with them, or oh, that's the person who represents my district. That's how I know who they are. They're not your big name representatives who are probably like, I got to play the long game. I'm going to go to the inauguration. I'm probably going to need something. Maybe I'll get called to help out in some way. I'm going to use this as a chit. That's with a C, CHIT. This is like, let's not start off where I'm on record of. And Kim K says she believes it's up to 56 Democrats.
Oh, wow.
So look at that. So it's 11 more.
That's a big number.
And those are just the members of the B Street Band.
I know. I was gonna say I love Maxine Waters. She's a representative out here in California. That's also the largest contingency of people out of any state that are not showing up. Of course, we're the largest state and a very democratic state here in California. So we're not totally out of the
We're the state that made Hillary Clinton president in the
popular
vote.
vote. Right. It helped to
if you
tip
took
her
us
over the
out,
edge.
she didn't have the
Exactly.
popular vote.
But hers was the best tweet. It was basically like, I wasn't going to show up anyways to begin with, even before the John Lewis thing, because I didn't want to waste my time. And that was great.
Look, I mean, maybe we'll do this when we do the show on Friday. Yeah. And if you're just joining us, we'll be covering Inauguration Day here at AfterBuzz TV at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. Friday, in case you didn't know, that it is January 20th. Yes. And maybe we'll talk about some of the things people could have been watching instead of that. I'm pretty sure Springer's on at that point.
Yeah, Price is Right.
Although, you know what, I'm going to bet it's not on, though, because CBS will cover it.
That's true. What are they going to watch? That's true.
I don't know.
That's the other thing. You'll have to DVR anything.
Drew Carey's a libertarian. He's like, good, I don't want any part of this. He's like, I'm not pro-Trump, I'm not anti-Trump, I'm just nothing.
I know. I had someone ask me that said, I don't think Obama should be there. I said, well, he's the president. He kind of has to be there.
He has to be there on the stage.
He's the current president until that moment. Like, he can't just not show up. Like, I'm sorry, but even if we don't agree with it.
As much as Obama's focused on his legacy, it's not going to end with him not being there for the transfer of power. I think that, say what you will about the way that Donald Trump has handled the transition, I would think that...
a nice segue into approval ratings.
Yeah, exactly. Is that President Obama has been stellar, and he's done a great job in the transfer, just as his predecessor, George W. Bush, did. His guy didn't win, John McCain. But at the same time, I think it's handled well. And the one thing that I will give Trump credit for is he's speaking out about Obamacare, which we'll talk about in a minute. But he's not speaking out about Obama. He's, maybe after he's actually the president, he will. But while the guy's still president, while he's giving him tips and pointers, he's not really saying anything that's too bad.
He did for a little bit. They had that little kerfuffle about if Obama could run again back over the holidays. And he said, he would, he would totally lose and Trump would win bigly and, all this stuff, which, of course, he would not have won. I hate to tell Trump that. But... It was just, that was the only time. And, of course, after 5 years of talking about his birth certificate and where he's from, and then he just dropped that. So I think he's already done enough to...
No, he's done enough, but he has, he's dialed that down. Everything else he's dialed way up.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of joining the club now, and that is a very exclusive club.
It's a very exclusive club. I mean, there's only going to be, 45? 46?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
47.
Really only,
if you're going to count Mike Pence in 2 years, as Scott already is.
Mike Pence for like a year and a half, and
then Paul Ryan. Okay, I see. I wasn't quite sure where this was going.
But when Mike Pence resigns, then they'll have to throw in Paul Ryan because he's the Speaker of the House, and then after that in 2020, then
And then Paul Ryan will run for re-election. See that? So we've already crafted the alternate timeline. Yeah. But as you mentioned,
Back to the Future 4. This will be Back to the Future 4 that'll be coming out.
No, because Biff is going to be president in Back to the Future 4. Anyway.
For a brief amount of time.
As you mentioned, the polling numbers, the approval rating for Donald Trump, someone who talks about how popular he is, depending on which one you look at, it's a pretty slim margin. The difference is between 37 and 40%.
Right.
That's the ones that I looked at. You can find other ones that say...
there's a couple that have
but there were 3
41.
high-profile ones. So between 37 and 41. And no one's had that low an approval rating, I think, since Jimmy Carter. And
his was higher.
His was higher.
And that was also a very... divisive election in 76 because that was after Watergate. That was the first election after, and it was a very close election, and Jimmy Carter barely eked out a victory over Ford.
And almost didn't become the nominee with the convention for Ted Kennedy.
Yep.
So it was that was a very divisive time. And by the way, everybody, we lived through that.
But... he did not. You're right. He did not have the highest approval ratings, and then he never really had very high approval ratings. That's why Ronald Reagan came in 80 and swept him out of office. But the point is, nobody in modern day has had such a low approval rating going into the office because usually the president-elect has a very good honeymoon period, and most people are overlooking. Even George W. Bush in 2000, when the whole that whole craziness happened, and I remember that vividly. He even had pretty high approval ratings.
Especially
in the low 60s.
Comparatively,
And then he was about in the 50s once he got into office and everything. But so Trump is already starting out in a very bad position, and the problem is he's not expanding his I would say audience for someone that's a reality TV star. He's not expanding it, and instead he's still staying with that very
he's
tiny,
still playing to the base,
and he's not expanding. And the problem is, it's only going to take a few of those people to be disgruntled to totally turn away from him, and he won in a very precarious way. So for him not to try to expand and try to, like he said, unite the country, he's going to have a very hard time being able to expand on the approval rating, unless, of course, something what happened, which we don't want to happen, like a terrorist attack or something that unifies the country like it did with George W. Bush in 2001, that can bring a lot of people together, and he shows some kind of leadership qualities. That's the only way I see that happening. Otherwise, his numbers are really just going to be stagnant and go down from there, which is not it's not a good place to start out with.
It's not a good place to be. There's, the president's usually going to become less popular over
as time goes on.
And when you're starting at 37 to 41%,
you're not in a good place to continue on, and also to help your party in the midterms in 18 and to be able to set
to find
up.
the silver lining for the president-elect. He's at least 30 points above Congress. So, he's got a much higher approval rating than Congress.
But, the funny thing is he always talks about making fun of Saturday Night Live. Well, not making fun of it, but saying how terrible it is and how unfunny it is. Saturday Night Live has higher approval ratings than Donald Trump does. When you take a peek, 48% of people like Saturday Night Live.
It's a show that's been out for 41 years.
Yes, but that has a higher approval rating than Donald Trump does right now.
Yeah.
So he's not working on expanding his audience, as he would like to say. And I don't know. His tweets to me feel like he lives in this alternate reality. I don't know if he wants, the more he tweets it, the more it becomes truth.
Yeah, I think so.
Or he thinks his ardent base is going to love it, or if he really does believe this. I don't understand, because he goes on and on about SNL, Hillary Clinton winning huge and bigly, and that he's going to have this huge inauguration, the biggest one ever. And I just don't know where that comes from. If it's trying to keep his support happy, or if there's some kind of in his own head. He actually believes it.
If you tweet that you're going to have the biggest inauguration of all time enough times, it'll be true to you, which is all that matters.
I don't know.
One of the other things he's been speaking out about this week is Obamacare. And let's talk a little bit about the aforementioned unpopular Congress, what they did in terms of Obamacare, and the fact that Trump says he has a plan to replace it, and the GOP has even said, well, could you tell us about this plan? Because we sure don't know what it is. But the interesting thing is, if you're planning on repealing it, and I think Rand Paul was out there saying this, if you're going to get rid of it, you got to have something to put into place. You can't just pull the plug.
Right. And that was his little side thing that he said the other day, too. Like, insurance for everybody. Yeah. Which is not what the Republican plan is.
Like,
you're basically that single-payer healthcare. And it's, again, showing just how he just does not understand.
By the way, also Mexico is going to pay for our health insurance.
Yes, they are.
They don't know it.
No, we're going to pay for it, and then they're going to reimburse us for it. Of course, that's how it's going to work. But it's ridiculous that they're so hell bent on repealing Obamacare instead of trying to fix it. And already people, that's the thing now. Obamacare is the most popular it has ever been up to this point. The most people are now on it than they have ever been. You have a lot of Republicans. There are actually more people in Republican states on the ACA than in the blue states. And you can call it Connect like you do in Kentucky. You can call it whatever it is. But the thing is, it is doing well in these states. And even Republican governors are a little bit concerned, that they can't just pull this back and not have a replacement. And that's the thing. They've had almost 7 years now to come up with some kind of replacement. I get there's different factions in the party, and they have different ideas of what they should do, but it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to just repeal it and not have any kind of replacement. And the problem is, any of the mainstream replacements that they have are not as good as what they have right now. And it is a very difficult thing. I mean, nobody's happy with the mandate, but you kind of need the mandate to make it work. Yeah. You need to have pre-existing conditions for people, because if you don't, that's a very popular thing, then you're just going back to what they had before, and that didn't work. So a lot of people are happy. 81% of people are actually happy with the ability of the insurance they get. Yes, there could definitely be changes, but they should fix those changes instead of working on gutting the whole thing and then building it back up again from the foundation. It just seems like it's just done out of purely political motivation. And rightfully so, like a lot of people are saying, why don't you get rid of your health care? We're paying for their health care. And they have great Cadillac health care, and we're paying for that. So
it'd be great if we could get that.
If we could have the same thing. So it's really, to me, incredibly unfair for them to even be doing that when they have their own health care that we, the people, are paying for. So instead of making it so political, let's fix it up. Sure, they could make it better, and they could still take the credit for it because they made it better, but instead they want to rip it down to the foundation and start over again, and there's not anything out there so far on the Republican side that even remotely helps to address these issues. It's not an easy issue to fix, and we all know that, but instead of trying to fix it, they're going on with their political thing and saying this is what they have to do.
Contrary to popular belief, I feel like Donald Trump is not an idiot. And I think he knows that it's popular in some of these states that he won. So he does want to replace it. He wants to replace it with Trump Care.
Right.
But what that will boil down to is just calling it Trump Care.
Yes.
And it'll actually be just all the same policies. But he's like, we repealed it. And then we put Trump Care
Well, that's
in
what I'm
place.
saying. That's why they want to do it, is because then they can take 100% credit instead of saying, oh, we just added
Obamacare was a disaster.
Yes, but we repealed it and redid it. Yeah, and it's basically the same thing. No, but it's a political thing, and that to me is what is so ridiculous about it. Instead of trying to fix it and still take credit and saying we fixed it. And yes, I do agree with you. I think Trump is actually very intelligent. He's not smart when it comes to government policy or wonkish or whatever, but he's obviously a smart guy to be able to make it through this entire time and be completely untraditional in every step of the way and beat 17 GOP people with tons of experience and then eke out a victory in 2016 for the presidency when everyone doubted him. So there's definitely something to it.
No, I mean, he's accomplished something. He beat 16 good candidates and Rick Perry. I mean, that's impressive.
Perry, yes.
But as Lawrence Bakery, again, in the chat room says, Congress should have to get the same health care that we all get.
I agree.
And
that's what I'm saying.
When they were pushing for the passage of Obamacare, that's what people were saying. It was like, yes. And I think that, maybe more congressmen, on the Democratic side, obviously, should have done that.
No, I agree. I agree. It should be on both sides. And if we're paying for their health care, then they should have the same thing that we have. And then they could also understand how it is for the everyday American, because regardless of what they say, even on the Democratic side, they just don't know if they're not experiencing them themselves. And by stripping things away that they have no clue with, because none of their other friends or colleagues or family are dealing with these type of things, this is life or death. It's not something to play around with politically, and this is something that everybody should come together on and make it the best that it can be, instead of turning into a political thing. And it's very upsetting, because I know people personally that depend on this Obamacare for pre-existing conditions, and I know other people that had their kids on, older because of this. So there are things that definitely work. So I think they need to be very careful before they get rid of it, or otherwise they're just really gonna shoot their own selves in the foot there, because the midterms are very short, and as crazy as it sounds, we just got through an election. But it's next November, 2018, and those people are up for re-election
people are exhausted and they'll want to think about it. But believe me, that campaign is starting already.
Yes, it is, because you've got to start raising the money and get out there. But if those people take away the health care, and that slim majority of people that put those people in power, like Trump and other things, those people will quickly turn and take those people right back out. So they have to be cognizant of that as well.
We're getting a little close to the end of the show, so I want to make sure we get to sort of an important thing that happened today, and this is not really Trump related, but I did want to discuss that President Obama commuted the bulk of the sentence of Chelsea Manning. Now, I honestly don't know the protocol that when someone transitions, if you're not supposed to call out what their name was, but I think that a lot of people don't know who Chelsea Manning is. When Caitlyn Jenner, people knew that Bruce Jenner had done that. That was Bradley Manning, who was court-martialed for basically giving military secrets to WikiLeaks. That's a pretty strong. That's basically the exact kind of thing that you go to jail for when you're in the military. Right. I think that you used to be hanged for it, but
it's like a treasonable offense.
It's very treasonable. Right. Yeah, it's a treasonable offense. It's bigly treasonous, to make light of it for a second. And the fact that President Obama commuted that sentence, people are very upset in conservative circles. I'm not quite sure what the thinking was. I don't know if it's because of the transitioning. I don't think that factors into it. No,
I don't think so, because that was a whole issue about us being the taxpayers having to pay for her transition and surgery and hormones and everything. That really didn't have anything to do with it. Apparently, from what I've read and what I've heard from people, is that President Obama, I'm hearing from people, but President Obama, I was going to do that joke with the Trump stuff. I'm hearing from people, but anyways, I'm hearing. But apparently he thought that she had served time and was making whatever positive improvement that she needed to warrant commuting the sentence. And I think, knowing who was coming into power next, that she had a 45-year sentence, so wasn't going to be getting out anytime soon. There's a lot of stuff to talk that we could go on forever if you agree with it or you don't agree with it. But apparently this was and I've heard that this was going to be happening, and that the president felt pretty strongly about commuting her sentence. Rightfully or wrongfully, people agreeing with it or disagreeing with it.
Lawrence Bakery, again getting a shout out in the chat room, pointed out Julian Assange said he would turn himself in if Chelsea Manning's sentence got commuted. I think that there's a technicality, because I think that it's not like Chelsea's been pardoned. you
Right.
know? But
Sentence is commuted, which is different than
so
pardoning,
it'll
which
be
the pardoning is going to be happening
interesting
next
because
few
if Julian Assange
days.
turns himself in,
Yeah.
you know.
It will be interesting between now and Friday to see who does President Obama not only commute, but who does he pardon in the next few days.
You know,
before he leaves
in
office.
recent history,
Is Edward Snowden going to be on there?
Right.
There
are a lot of
the
people that
could
are,
be?
you know, petitioning for not Julian Assange, but for Edward Snowden.
Yeah, and what other people out there that we're
when
not
you
even
think
thinking
of
about?
some of the people who have been pardoned, you know, I don't even have time to talk about who Mark Rich was and how I can't believe that he got
2001
pardoned
with Bill Clinton,
but
yeah.
he did, and you're just like, oh, because he was rich and had a lot of rich friends, and it's terrible, and that's not why it should happen. So people have gotten pardoned for some terrible things,
Right.
And
It's
always
political,
interesting to
very
see.
political
Yeah.
reasons,
Yeah.
and not always for the best
Obama's
reasons.
gonna get up that morning and sign a few more of them, and you know we won't know right away.
No, we
and
won't know till
there'll
the
be some
very end.
surprise. He'll be, you know, back in.
He'll be back here in California.
He'll be
He's
back
coming here for the weekend.
Is he?
To sleep in? Yeah, he's coming on a very rainy weekend, but he's coming out to Rancho Mirage, where I guess their house is going to be one of their houses.
There's good golf there.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
obviously.
So he's
Yeah.
coming out here this weekend to sleep in and not set that alarm clock. First few days as a private citizen.
Absent TV asks, what was the leaked stuff from Chelsea Manning? It was military secrets and troop positionings and things
Yeah,
like
it was
that. Things that on
that are
record,
classified
Osama bin
and-
Laden, I think, you know, used some of that information that WikiLeaks had published. And say what you will about WikiLeaks and them doing things for the good reason, I think that that's exactly what the problem is, and you can't give out troop positionings and tactics and strategy. Obviously, he felt like he needed to because he felt like they didn't belong there. That's how I feel. You know, to me, Julian Assange is a criminal. Edward Snowden, it's a little harder to say because think about what we know because of Edward Snowden, and we don't have time to talk about it.
No,
I
that's
should
what I'm
not
saying.
have opened
That
can of worms.
and I know because there's that could be its own show.
That could be
talking
its
about
own show.
that
But
and,
I want to know what
the
everyone
greater
else
good
thinks
and
about
with Chelsea Manning, what she did and what she
let
felt
us
was
know
right
what you
and
think
wrong.
about Chelsea
and
Manning.
getting that sentence commuted and what you think about what she did and the reasons behind it.
And Julian Assange even and Edward Snowden. I want to know what everyone thinks about all that stuff. We're at Trump Report. No, I did it wrong. It's no, it was right. See, I didn't trust myself because it wasn't in front of me. At Trump Report ABTV. That's where you can find us. And again, you can find us on Friday. We will be doing an after show of the Obama administration, but it's actually an after show of Inauguration Day, the swearing in, the ceremony.
I'm gonna have to be sedated or something.
I mean, you really shouldn't be drinking. He and Chelsea were joking about drinking that
I'm
day.
just thinking
But
I need
the
to be
swearing in
sedated.
is at 9 a.m. our time. So
Mimosas?
Yeah,
Bloody
no,
Marys?
Let's
How are you feeling?
Let's have brunch at that point.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Boy.
and
Need it.
one final thing, Julia D'Agostino says, I love what you guys are saying. I'm agreeing with most of it. This is my first live chat. I've watched AfterBuzz. I'm totally digging it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Julia. Thanks,
Yeah, it's great to
everybody
have some
who
new
joined
people
us
out
there in
there,
the
so
chat.
thank you, and
make sure you tune in on Friday. And next Tuesday, we'll be back as well. For Scott Moore at SMan80. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ. And we will see you Friday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 Eastern, right here for more Trump Report. Thanks so much, everyone.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.